Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Flying Changes Mindset and Performance Show with me, Jenny Winterleach, and today I'm joined by the lovely Rebekah Jackson. Hi Rebekah.
Hi Jenny, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We had a couple of technical hitches today, so we're here. It's all good. Some might think it's a blessing that you couldn't hear me, but it's not ideal on an interview. So Rebekah, tell us just a little bit about yourself and what brings you to be sat chatting to us today.
Oh gosh, what brings me to be sat talking to you guys today? I suppose my background is in high performance sport. So I was an elite swimmer when I was a teenager. I stopped all that when I hit 18 though, and went off to uni. And through that journey, really, of sort of being in high performance sport, we didn't really focus on any mindset stuff or performance psychology stuff. And I finished that when I was sort of 18, went to uni, and suddenly realised there was a whole life outside of high performance sport, competitive sport, and then sort of went to uni, spent my sort of 20s and 30s building a career, and I then found myself in sort of 2018 after working really hard doing jobs that I absolutely loved, being in a situation where I was being faced with redundancy again from a job that I absolutely adored doing, and in a really toxic work environment that had a huge impact on my mental health, leading to the fact that I was essentially diagnosed with anxiety and low-level depression, all relating to the trigger for that was work-related stress and the environment I was in at work. And I removed myself from that environment and then set up my own company. So I'm now 2.5 years into that journey now, and absolutely loving it, but recognizing that a huge part of that journey was related to improving and working on my mindset. And I've got 2 horses. I've got the wonderful, my grey competition horse, who's owned by my mum, called Trot on Tommy, and he is an absolutely wonderful horse. He's so talented, and we are taking him up the levels now. So he's just competed at Novice at British Eventing. And I've got the lovely James Rockford, who is who I call my project pony, although he's 17 hands, he's absolutely huge. And to work with both of those has meant that I've had to really recognise that I didn't have all the tools that I needed in my tool belt, really, to kind of really make sure that I was performing at my best. And I didn't actually have anything to fall back on, particularly from my competitive swimming career, because we hadn't really needed to go down that route when I was swimming. And I was relying heavily on the stuff that I'd done through work, but I didn't really have all of those tools. And I came across Jenny, and so have joined the Eden Ambassador Programme and have been blown away by the impact that it's made, really, in terms of just being able to get back out competing, and just recognizing that I got that gap in my skill set, really, that I hadn't got anything to fall back on, meant that I just came hunting for something and found a Jenny, which was great. And
awesome.
Not just about Jenny, bless her. I mean, it is about Jenny, but actually it's finding the community of Eden. That's been the biggest difference, to recognize you're not on your own, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, wow, I mean, what an incredible journey you've been through. Like when it's funny, isn't it? When you sit there and you say it back, you think, flipping heck, like, because you're not asked very often, are you? Not asked very often, like, what have you been and what have you done? And when you just relay it back like that, you think, wow, that was a roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely was. I think when I kind of reflect back on it, and I try to be really reflective, and because I know it's I work with childcare practitioners, so we talk all the time in work, if you like, about being reflective and thinking about the journey that you've been on and what you can learn from that. You can always learn something from every experience that you've been through, and I always try to. But when you do look back on that journey and recognize what you've been through and what it gives you in terms of skills and experience to draw on, but also where the gaps are and what you're missing, it is huge. And I've learned so much from the experience of being unwell with my mental health, and the kind of the shock of that actually happening to me, but considering myself to be a really, you know, well-rounded, resilient person with lots of strength, and being, you know, kind of that person that nobody expected it to happen to, was quite a shock, really. A shock for everybody around me, but also a massive shock to me that I couldn't just cope. But learning from that experience has meant that I actually am way more aware of where things might get on top of me, where I need more support, the people who are around me who can provide that in different ways, because you do need support in different ways. And kind of really recognizing that it's something that I now talk really openly about. I talk really openly with it about mental health with my clients, the people that I work with on their success journey, but also kind of really recognizing the impact of it on my performance with the horses, and how much they gave me, and having that structure to work to, but also to fall back on with the horses, was incredible. And it really, really massively helped, but also led to me selling one of my horses, because my mental state, my performance state, meant I wasn't able to. I was asking unrealistic things of him, and my trainer, the wonderful Tuffy Tilly, she said to me, she was like, "Beck, you've really got to sell him, because the two of you can't work together anymore." And I'm amazing home now. It was absolutely the best thing for both of us. But you know, it's those hard things that you have to kind of go through, those really difficult times. Like, you know, proper broke my heart over selling him, but it was absolutely the right thing for both of us. And you can look back and recognize that you've got to have those trusted people in your life who sometimes tell you the hard stuff that you have to kind of go away and think about and listen to. You know, I mean, so lucky to have so many people in my life who really did kind of pick me up, all in different little ways. Everybody contributed and helped me in different ways to get over that. But you kind of have to recognize that all of that has an impact on where you are now. And all of that has a part to play in terms of my mindset around performance and with my business as well now. So yeah, you're always looking back to go forwards, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, you don't want to be stuck in either place, really. Life is about balance, isn't it? It's about looking back and seeing how far you've come, or what you've overcome, or what you've learned, or what you'd like to do differently or improve upon, and looking forward to how you're going to do that, what you need to put in place, what you need to learn, what skills you've got to get. And obviously you're very resourceful. You realize things and think, right, what can I do about that? It's very kind of proactive. But when you were in that really toxic work environment, and you were undergoing, you know, you were under stress, your mental health perhaps wasn't that great at that point in time, what were kind of the things that were happening to you that you maybe now know about but didn't at the time? If there's anyone out there thinking, oh, that's not me, and actually it is, because like you said, everyone was so surprised to hear it was you, you know, what are the kind of maybe signs or things that they might be aware of, or things that you noticed at the time that were just the little red flags that you're probably ignoring until they got really big?
I suppose I'm always, because you come from, you know, coming from a background in competitive sport, you're always juggling, aren't you? You're always like chucking all those balls up and fitting everything in, and kind of just managing to make everything happen, really. And one of the things that I kind of reflect on now and recognize is that I was always trying to control something. If things weren't good at work, I was always trying to control things at home and make sure things were sort of really on point at home, really, that everything was running really smoothly. And my poor partner, bless him, you know, he got it in the neck so many times because, you know, a glass wasn't put away properly or whatever. So I suppose a trigger for me where things aren't kind of, where things feel perhaps out of control in one area of my life, I know that I start overcompensating in others. And that was a lesson that I learned, that, you know, if things were feeling completely out of control at work, or I wasn't coping, or I didn't feel I was coping at work, and I wasn't able to perform at my best at work because of the stress I was under, started like overcompensating and micromanaging everything elsewhere in my life. I also really found that my sleep pattern was interrupted. I'm notoriously a brilliant sleeper. You know, I will get into bed and about 10 seconds later I'll be completely zonked out and I would sleep through the night, but my sleep pattern was massively interrupted. I would wake up with racing thoughts. I would be overplaying conversations that I'd had, trying to perhaps strategize in my head how I would handle conversations, how I'd handle things at work. And one of the things that I found really helped me with that was, and I'm now completely addicted to, is listening to audiobooks. So I would plug my earphones in and listen to a story, which gave my brain something else to focus on, so that I could actually at least go back to sleep. And that was a massive trigger. And now I recognise that if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all the things that are going on, I know that I'll wake up with some racing thoughts. Particularly, sort of early in the morning. So you learn all the time about those little triggers. My emotional reactions to things also were heightened. So I was really lucky at work to have an amazing team of people that I worked with. So the team that I led were fantastic, but I ended up being in a position where I would bring all of the stuff that I was trying to deal with into the office. I would bring all of that stuff with me. I'd end up perhaps oversharing with them because I just needed to get it. I needed to talk about it. I needed to get it off my chest. So I would end up bringing, in reality, in reflection, probably not being quite as professional as I should have been, because I would share that stuff with them, with the team that I was leading. So my leadership was impacted upon. And that would lead to the point of me completely breaking down and being in floods of tears and all sorts in the office, which again, didn't lead to a great work environment for them. So thinking back on it, I know that had I had some tools, had I had a little bit more awareness of what was perhaps going on at that time, which is always difficult because you don't always recognize it, I would have perhaps been able to handle those in a different way. But again, recognizing that I'm perhaps not responding in the most sort of emotionally level way is something that now I would recognize as a trigger. And everybody's really different, and I don't suppose that those triggers would or those happenings would necessarily be the same for everybody, but for me those were certainly sort of three of the key things really that I would try really hard to recognize now if I'm feeling a bit stressed, a bit overwhelmed, a little bit like things are getting on top of me, that those are the things that would be a bit of a key kind of a key trigger really, or a key reflection now to say, hang on a minute, this balance isn't just quite right. Even last week, I was feeling a little bit pressured at work, and my emotional responses, particularly at home, weren't where they needed to be. And my partner who says to me, he said, do you think things are a little bit unbalanced at the minute? Do you need a little break? And of course I bit his head off, that's what we do. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's a thing. So you just, for me, those were some of the things that on reflection would have been red flags. But I think everybody's different, aren't they, really? We all respond differently, don't we?
Yeah, everyone does, definitely. But I think, there's some key things there, which is your emotional response seems out of kilter with the situation, seems maybe a bit irrational, when those sort of things are coming up in anything in life, doesn't necessarily have to be in work. That's definitely one of those times when you think, oh, hang on a minute, I just flew off the handle because someone put the fork the wrong way around in the dishwasher, and you think, well, I'm not really that upset about that now, am I? Normally that would be fine. What else is it that's going on? Why has that tipped me over the edge? And, things like that at work, like, someone hasn't put you didn't put the attachment on the email or something, and then you have this massive dramatic overreaction to it or what have you. And you think, well, hang on, that's coming as a result of the fact there must be other stuff going on right now. And knowing that that's the case, I think that's really key. Absolutely. Sleep is often one that, it's whatever your normal sleeping pattern is. If that then becomes different, then that's a sign. And I love, the control one. Obviously, I don't love it. It's not a good thing. But knowing when you're trying to massively control other things, that is what happens when we're in panic, we're in fear, we're in stress. We just try and get some semblance of control back from wherever we can get it. And like you say, that will then sometimes be that maybe you spot it in your riding. Maybe you've suddenly become really controlling in your riding, or annoyed or angry or upset, or, everything has to be perfect, or you can't cope. Your horse does the slightest thing that it, normally do, but you can't deal with it. You think, oh, hang on, there's something going on here. So looking back, you can see all that stuff now. But at the time when that was going on, what was the point at which you thought, oh, something's got to change? Like, I've got to make some big decisions, make some big changes. Or did that happen to you? Because what happens is when we're in these situations, one of two things is going to happen. Either we somehow realize, and often that comes from, like you say, external help, someone around you go, something's not right here. That was certainly in my case. And we think, oh, right, we're going to have to make a change. Or something happens that means that we have to, like we get made redundant, or actually we get let go from the job, or our health gets to the point where we can't do it, or something like that. What was it for you that was that pivotal moment where you thought, no?
It's funny, really, because I was in full fight mode. I was fighting for everything. I was fighting the whole process that we were going through at work. I was in full fight mode. And it was actually a conversation with one of the team from the union, actually, who said to me, I'd probably broken down in his office and started sobbing again. I can't really remember quite how it came about, but what he said to me, he said, you need a few days away from the situation. He said, I'm actually, a little bit worried that it's not having a great impact on you. He said, I strongly suggest that you go home and you go and talk to your doctor and suggest that they sign you off for a few days, for a week maybe. And actually it was that prompt, really, from somebody who didn't actually know me at all, who broke through from that kind of, constantly trying to fix things, trying to fight things, trying to get stuff back into that sense of order, that really kind of broke through to me, because actually then just removing myself from that situation, from basically signing off sick for what I had hoped would be a week, actually led to a much longer period of me being out of that environment. And it was being out of that environment for that short period of time that meant that essentially I recognised how ill I was, and how much it had impacted on me, because I literally couldn't go out of bed for 3 days. I hid. I really did hide, and to the point where I would stay in bed all day and hide under the covers until my partner got back, and then I'd jump up, and just before he was getting back from work, because I was hiding from him how unwell I was, and from my family probably, I would jump out, have a quick shower, and pretend that everything is normal and I'd just been having a nice day at home. But it was that push, really, and that for somebody else who didn't know me to recognise that things weren't right, there was some perhaps red flags for them in terms of how I was perhaps behaving or how I was presenting to them, that then meant that I removed myself. And then I just realised how toxic, conversations with my mum and dad, who are, they're just brilliant in terms of the amount of support that I receive from them in everything that I do. It's conversations with, other trusted people like my trainer, people around me at the time, my partner, and so on and so forth. They just were like, actually, this is just not a good situation for you to be in. It all kind of pulls together as a bit of a realization moment. And what I was able to do once I was out of that situation for a short period of time was kind of recognize the impact it was having on me, and come to terms with the fact that actually ultimately I was being made redundant. There was absolutely nothing that I could do to change that. I knew it wasn't personal, but it also felt quite personal. The process felt personal, I suppose. And recognizing that I had no control over that meant that I could free myself from the obligation of trying to fight it, trying to make it right in my mind, and make the process more right in terms of my values. So that I could kind of just let it happen, because I had no control over it. And when I look back on it again, talking about reflection, look back on it in terms of what that kind of pivotal point was, I've really taken that understanding of control and influence, and really parking the stuff that you have no control and no influence over. That has had a huge impact in terms of how I kind of manage things that are impacting on how I'm coping at the moment. Really thinking about the things that I can control, the things that I can influence, the things that actually I just have to leave well alone and park. That has kind of come from that experience, really, of really realizing that I can't fight everything that doesn't serve me well, that doesn't sit with my values or within my integrity. I do sometimes have to leave things alone, and I can't superhero manhandle everything, and really kind of really filter stuff into things that I can actually influence and things that I can actually control. And that's been, I don't know what, I know I can see you smiling because I know that it's something that you teach all the time and you support us to understand, but you know, sometimes you have to kind of reflect back and recognize that, yeah, I was just trying to fight stuff, trying to get all those little things to line up in a way that sat comfortably with me, knowing now with hindsight that, you know, I had no control over that situation, or like I couldn't fight it, I couldn't change it, but I was still living well trying. And it's funny because now it's something that is so core in terms of the values that I have in terms of how I work with people, but also in terms of how I run my business, and also how I try, because it's harder with your personal stuff, isn't it? How I try to make it, I had to try to kind of recogniise that in terms of my personal life and stuff outside of business and stuff with sport. I mean, why do we go eventing? Everything is uncontrollable. You know, it's and I know that it so doesn't fit with what I've just said, but you know, in my sporting life, the stuff I love doing, my hobby, if you like, almost everything in that sport is uncontrollable. There's too many variables.
Yeah,
it's funny.
And actually, yeah, it definitely is. And that brings me to my question, which I really wanted to know about, because a lot of people listening into this are, you know, they might be seeing some of this in themselves. You know, they're in hard jobs, they're trying to earn lots of money to look after horses. You know, they're going to be stressful. Like, jobs can be stressful. That's one of those things. But how much is too much is kind of the question, really. So what was happening in your riding, though, at the time when you were stressed? Because I know from my experience, like, I was horrible as a rider. Like, my mare, I had a mare, she'd just look at me when I'd turn up. And of course, she was on, you know, part livery and things. So I would literally just turn up to ride and be like, you can bog right off if you think you're coming near me today. And she was horrible to ride. And she wasn't like that. That's not what she was like. She just didn't want me on her back. She was like, you're horrible to be around, go away. And that was really influencing my competition and my scores. And of course I was going out and being like, I worked so hard for this, I've got to do well. That was my experience of it. What was your experience of the effect that it was having on your riding, your eventing, when you were stressed with other things? And that's supposed to be your release, your time.
Oh, it's a really interesting one, because Russell, my horse at the moment, he was competing at novice. He was really ready to jump an intermediate. There was no way I could go and do something new. There was absolutely no way that I could have been in the right headspace to even attempt being brave and doing something new. Like, you know, jumping an intermediate, which still makes me feel a little bit sick. We had actually entered the 1 star, as it was at the time. We'd entered that twice over that period, and actually, really bizarrely, and I know you find this really funny, Jelly, the mind-body connection. I'd actually broken my hand, this bone here, on one hand on 1 year, and then the next year I did this hand exactly the same break just before I was due to go to each of the 1 stars that I'd entered. And I guess I always wonder now whether or not that had some kind of impact in terms of the connection between your mind and your body, and where my head was at was preventing me from taking that sort of next step, really. But in terms of my day-to-day riding and the stress I was under, my trainer said to me, she said, and I've never forgotten it, she said, you are trying to control everything. When things go wrong in your life, or things are impacting in your everyday life, they come through to your riding. And she said, what you try to do is to think, twitch your left ear 5 degrees to the right, and therefore it will happen, and you get cross if that won't happen, and you start almost attacking in your riding, you're almost falling out with a horse over nothing. And she was right. Of course she's right. You know, trainers are very often right when they're right for you, and she knows me very, very well. So I was doing that shutting down thing, I was doing that controlling thing, trying to control absolutely everything, without recognizing that Russell was a horse, had his own mind, the brain between you and the floor. And to be fair to him, he put up with an awful lot. and tolerated an awful lot from me, bless his heart. And he was a bit of a saint, really. But it came out more in competition rather than at home in training. I actually drove we live in just in the North Wales border, and we drove up to compete at Warwick Hall, which is up in Cumbria. And I actually completed the dressage test. It wasn't a great test. I wasn't terribly pleased with it. It was okay mark wise, but I knew that we could do better. I went to walk the cross country course and had an overwhelming fear of dread that descended on me. And actually, by the time I got back to the lorry park, I had a full-blown panic attack in the lorry park. And I'll always be grateful to the friend who was with me at the time for, you know, just packing up and driving me home and making sure that we were all okay. But in reality, I didn't have the resilience to deal with anything that went wrong. And in my head, I was only focusing on the things that were going wrong, or could go wrong in my riding. I wasn't even able to tune into any of the positives. So now, looking back at that dressage test, for example, I know that it was okay. It wasn't the greatest performance, but it was an average performance, particularly given the amount of stress that I was under. And I can pull out the positives now, and I'm very good at identifying the things that go well in a performance now. But at the time, I couldn't see through that at all, and I was only focusing on the negatives, only focusing on the things that would potentially go wrong. So even though I'd sort of jumped 10, 15 novices at this point, and you know, it was perfectly within our comfort zone in terms of being able to get around safely and have a nice time, I couldn't see past the potential of that things going wrong at each of the fences. I didn't even walk the show jumping, because we didn't get to that stage. And I think that the two things, I suppose, in terms of my riding was trying to control everything, trying to control, you know, almost things that are unfair, and really focusing down to teeny tiny details and obsessing over them in many ways, and not being able to kind of see through that, think about, okay, I can't get perhaps enough left bend here. Maybe if I do a little circle, use a little flexion, for example, that will improve the way of going. The solutions that you have to find when you're riding or training to sort of improve things as you're going along. I couldn't do that. I didn't have the mental width to be able to do that. I couldn't think further than what was happening right here, right now, and the thing I wanted to achieve. And then with competition, I just absolutely couldn't focus on anything that had gone positively. I could only focus on the things that had gone wrong, or could potentially go wrong. And I'm really fortunate that didn't prevent me from going back and competing there again. You know, I love the venue. I'll still go back there. We're due back there in a couple of weeks now with Trot On. And I've been there since and competed there since, and it didn't impact on me. And I thought, you know what, actually, that's a massive tick in my mental achievement box of having been able to get over, you know, what was a really scary experience. But being able to kind of move past that and go, okay, I'm aware of it. I'm going to keep some, you know, eye on how I'm feeling, but I'm all right. I'm safe. It's fine. And I guess, you know, for me, certainly it was just that sort of hyper control that I was seeking in everything. That was certainly, you know, the biggest thing. And I'm so lucky that Russell didn't just, you know, pop me on the floor and say, don't be ridiculous, mum, you know, you can't control that. You know, he is an absolute saint. But I know that for lots of other people that their horses aren't quite perhaps as tolerant as I was lucky to have. But also I had Tommy as a 4-year-old who was just so different, and almost because he was different, because we didn't know each other so well, that I couldn't think twitch your right ear 5 degrees to the left and expect him to do it. You know, it gave me a different focus with my riding because I was doing something different. He was unestablished. I had to really think about how I rode him. So 2 very different horses, you know, and I'm really lucky that I had both of them, and that we actually bought Tommy in the middle of me being unwell. So it gave me that different focus. It made me ride in a different way, which I'd like to think didn't impact on Russell quite so much. You know, he's still doing a brilliant job for his new jockey. So hopefully I didn't ruin him too much by being so controlling.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting though, isn't it, that, you know, classic story there of it's not just your riding, it's everything else in your life that influences it. We like to think we can compartmentalize, you know, I'm at work now, I'm riding now, I'm at home now, whichever it is. And you just can't. Your brain doesn't do that. It's running the same patterns. It's got the same stuff going on. And I think it's really interesting when people come to me and they'll say like, oh, you know, I had a panic attack. I want to get over that. I want to be able to compete and things. And they think I'm literally just going to deal with the fact that, what do you do if you have a panic attack? You know, what are the tools you can do if that's going to happen, or to stop it, ideally? No one ever expects to get to the level that we get to of looking at the whole life, looking at everything else that's going on, because, you know, you've just said there, it's not one thing. And so if at that point in time you had said, actually, I think I'm gonna go and find someone to help me with the competition nerves and things, what do you think you'd have been expecting at that point?
Oh, I'd have been expecting some kind of magic fix. I definitely been expecting that somebody could kind of say, you know, if you start feeling these, you know, feelings of existential dread that, you know, everything's going to go wrong, you know, think about sunny skies or something like that. You know, that almost the cliched stuff that you expect from or you might expect from sort of mindset work and the sort of the healing nature of what comes with that. I definitely would have expected it to perhaps be a little bit more fluffy, and to kind of then need to, you know, just have perhaps a couple of tools in my tool belt for when that particular situation occurs, rather than actually what I've realized with mindset and performance psychology and really working on all of that stuff is that it's not just one tool, that you need a number of tools to be able to kind of fall back on. And actually, it's not something that you just do once, you do it almost all the time. You work on it all the time. It becomes part of, like, layers of an onion almost, that you peel back one layer and you go, oh, hang on, that might be a thing I need to examine a little bit more as well. But I do think I would have expected to just kind of have a pattern of thinking perhaps that would have snapped me out of sort of getting that response to feeling panicked, to feeling anxious. But I know that you'll say it's not that easy. It's not just one thing, because you sort of peel all those little layers off, don't you? And there's more stuff under there that you've got to deal with.
There is. And I mean, as much as it can be as simple as having that tool in that moment, that's the tool you need. You need to have the whole toolbox, so you're not trying to, you know, nail in a screw with a hammer, or, you know, screw in a screw with a hammer. It's knowing what tool and when, and that's the point of learning about mindset, isn't it? It's not a case of this tool for this and this tool for that. It's like, this is quite helpful in this situation, but actually this one might be, play about, see what works for you. So what has been your experience then, since you've been, because you joined us as an ambassador in January?
Yeah.
We'd never worked together, and having had the elite child athlete as a swimmer, you say you never had any of this mindset work, that just wasn't a thing back then. What's been your experience of all the things you've been through and being on the team recently? What's been your experience of being as part an ambassador, being part of Flying Changes, you know, having the coaching and things like that?
It's been amazing. I talked with my mum and dad about this a little bit, because obviously, you know, I was a teenager when I was swimming, and I think it would have had a huge impact in terms of perhaps a little bit more longevity in terms of my swimming career, in terms of supporting the performance. If I'd have had a Jenny in my life back then, you know, we could have perhaps achieved even more. And that's not to say that I didn't achieve well. We really did. Both myself and my brother really achieved well, but that wasn't without its hurdles. And, you know, testament to my mum and dad, who instilled an amazing sense of self-belief in us, and actually gave us quite, when I reflect on it now, knowing what I know, actually managed to give us incredible guidance as athletes, without having a sporting background or anything like that themselves. You know, they did a cracking job in terms of supporting us from a performance mindset perspective. So I think it would have made an absolute huge difference to us back then. Now, having joined the team, and I'm not sure, Jenny, I might have told you this, but I might not have. I actually came across the ambassador program for the previous year, and half applied, and then didn't actually have the self-belief back in 2019, it would have been, or 2019, 2020, to actually hit submit on the application form to be an ambassador for Eden, for the work that you do. And I've done some mindset work through the coaching stuff that I've been doing in terms of supporting my business growth. So I recognise to a certain extent the impact that it could have. But I also do think that when you come across people and perhaps you follow them on social media, or you listen to them, you do a little bit of research in terms of, what do other people say about them? You look at testimonials to help you work out whether or not they're the right kind of person to support you on whatever journey you're looking for. And for me, it was I followed Jenny for a little while now. I need to actually do this. I'm really ready to translate all this mindset stuff into my performance with horses. My experience of having joined the community is that the community that's been built around Eden is incredible. The amount of support that you get from each other, from the other members of either the ambassador program or the wider Eden program. I've even signed up to the masterminds now, so I'm fully in terms of this transformational journey. But what I've kind of realized in my journey is that it's really important to have the right kind of people around you, but that you also can protect yourself by picking and choosing what you kind of which parts of that community that you listen to, which parts of that you sign up to, which parts of that you engage with. And the Flying Changes, the Eden community is amazing because you can engage at whatever level you want to. If you want to sort of sit back in the background and just take things in for a while, there's no judgment. There's absolutely no judgment from the community. And that's what makes it really wonderful. There are people who need more interaction, who are more chatty, but there are also people who kind of sit in the background and take things in and then take that and apply it to themselves, which is a little bit how I interact with it. The coaching that I've had from Jenny has actually been amazing. And I suppose I had this perhaps naive view that that the coaching would kind of be kind of very black and white. That Jenny would talk to you about some techniques or some uncover some things, and you'd have this lightning bolt moment where you'd suddenly realise that's a thing I need to work on, or now I'm fixed. And I perhaps still came into working with Jenny as an ambassador from that perspective, really. And actually, it's been more evolving. Jenny sort of guided me through some stuff I clearly needed to work through, and has given me some tools and has helped me do a little bit of rewiring in my brain. And actually, it's just been more of a gentle process. And I haven't had, you don't have these sort of I haven't had these necessarily like lightning bolt, oh, you're fixed in this area moments. But what I have noticed is sort of subtle differences in terms of my competition nerves. Although I'm not going to lie, when I ran my first novice with Tommy last week, I was still very nervous, and I was using all of my techniques for my life in the back of the lorry. But it's kind of a process that has been so gently supportive for me, that I haven't felt pressured in terms of engaging at any level. I've been able to join the calls around my working commitments, and I've been able to catch up, and I've been able to sort of lurk in the background a little bit, which has all meant that, some of my perhaps self-confidence wobbles have been kind of not recognised, because it's kind of inherent in the way in which the programme does that. But I've been allowed to kind of just see how it feels and kind of gently step up to joining in a little bit more. And that, I suppose, is the beauty of it being a group coaching programme, is that you kind of can hide in the background, that until you're feeling more comfortable to do the one-to-one stuff, because the one-to-one stuff is more intensive. But I know that because it's one-to-one, you can be quite open. You can sort of kind of share some of that the very honest wobbles that you're having, or the very honest worries that you've got, without feeling judged, without feeling like you're saying something silly. That's certainly been my experience. But the impact of it in terms of how I handle competition, how I handle working my horses, but also more widely how I recognise some of my triggers, how I recognise some of my wobbles, has been huge, and it's come very quickly as well. It wouldn't necessarily be that way for everybody, but it has come really quickly in terms of the work I've been able to do with Jenny. We front loaded some of the one-to-one coaching, so that I could go out and get back to competition after a break last year for COVID, with confidence, really, without feeling, super sick with nerves, like particularly over the show jumping. I don't know why. I have an inkling why. But being able to put those tools in place has meant that I've been able to sort of, get back out competing, and we've done 4 events in 4 weeks, to kind of really get us back with a bang, to be honest. And I even ate breakfast for the first event. I actually had 2 breakfasts, which is unheard of in my world. And just having all of those sort of tools off the back of working with Jenny has been amazing. It has been real confidence building in such a short period of time. But I suppose that also what you've got underneath that one-to-one work is that lovely group program through Eden that is hugely supportive of an amazing bunch of people from all different types of backgrounds as well. We've got people who are trying to get very everyday riding tasks are a hurdle for them, or where they need support with that. But there's also people who are looking at their competition performance as well. So it's a massive variety of people in the community. There really is a place for everybody in it. It's been the most uplifting experience in many ways. Huge team of cheerleaders behind you as well. We all celebrate every single thing that happens with our horses, whether that's a minor achievement or a major achievement, or whether or not it's very much the sort of the everyday stuff that happens with horses that makes you feel rubbish, or you just have to kind of get back up and dust yourself off and go, that's horses for you. It's just the community is the key. And I think I've probably said it a few times already, having the right kind of people around you, choosing your tribe really, or being choosier with your tribe perhaps, has been a real realization for me in terms of my own journey. But feeling like I belong and feeling like I fit in as part of the Eden family, really, it is testament to the work that you've built, Jenny. You've created that community, or the boundaries of that community, certainly, to help us all feel like we do belong.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'll pay you later for that wonderful testimonial. But yeah, it's it is lovely to hear that. I mean, I've always talked about the importance of community, but when you're in it and you're in the right one, then you really get it. When you're in the wrong one, it's like load of nonsense, really. Why they're bleating on about community? It's just a pain in the bum, aren't they, people? But actually, when you're in the right one, it's fantastic. So let's have some fun then. Let's do some quick fire questions for you. Oh yeah, okay. What is the biggest misconception that people have about you, or assumption that people have about you?
Oh, but this.
This being, for those on the podcast?
For those on the podcast, this is my hair. Yes, I am naturally blonde, but that does not mean I'm a bimbo.
Awesome. I got that one too. This is natural curly blonde hair. Must be. Okay. Sorry?
Must have no brain cells. And actually, famously, somebody did ask me if I was there to take the minutes once in a very strategic meeting. I was like, oh no, dear, no.
Oh dear. We still get that. It's crazy, isn't it, that still happens? I got that once. I was I had a consultancy role, global consultancy role in a big telecoms company, and I turned up to a corporate event once, and of course I was in the corporate kit, and it was one of these big kind of charity event with all these footballers, people I actually didn't have a clue they're all like football celebrities and golf people, and I don't do football or golf, so I have no idea. And someone turned around and said, oh, can you go get me a drink, please? So I was like, well, I can. And they said, oh, sorry, I thought you were here, to support the event. I said, well, I am here to support the event, yes, as a global talent consultant. And they were like, I'm so sorry. I was like, no, it's fine, don't worry, it happens. So funny. And then you can't watch them backtrack quick enough. It is quite amusing. Okay, so what is the biggest challenge or difficulty that's turned into your biggest learning?
Ooh, it's got to be the control thing. My biggest learning has absolutely, well, oh no, can I have two? The controlling what you can control and recognizing what you can only influence and parking the rest. My mum, bless her heart, has been telling me this my entire life, but actually recognizing when that's not always actually within your power to do, and actually making it really happen is now become a real strength of mine, and it's something that I support lots of other people in doing. And I did want a second one, and I can't remember what it is now. I will.
Oh, you clearly didn't need the second one. It will pop up. It's fine. It will pop up. Okay, so what are your overarching goals now? What are you working towards in maybe your writing and your career and whatever? But what are they? What's your why?
My writing goals are that I want to will take Tommy to 2-star at Blair in August. That is our aim. We're frantically trying to get him qualified before the ground gets too hard. So we're that is my overarching goal, is to go 2-star, and I have promised Jenny that I will actually get my tailcoat out of the tailors where it has been for about 4 years. So that is my my writing goal for this season. I've got some pretty big business goals. My ultimate business goal is I want to hit 6 figures in turnover for my business, which is for just a little person with a small business, a work from home business, an online business. That is a big goal for me. I suppose what's my personal goal, because that gives me one sporting, one business, and one personal goal, is to actually get to our wedding date next year now, after what, I think 19 years together. We're fine, myself and my partner we're actually getting married, so that's actually making that happen in a global pandemic is a fairly big goal. So we managed to wait sort of 18 years to actually make it happen, and then only we could get a global pandemic which stops that from happening for another couple of years. So that's that's my personal goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I suppose it's around wellness and keeping myself level and well and happy is really important as well. Absolutely.
Whatever you believe about life, whether you believe we get one or not, even if we don't, the one you're in right now, you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. So who has inspired you along the way?
Oh gosh. The strongest person I've got 2 incredibly strong women in my life. The strongest person that I know, my absolute inspiration, is my mama muse, as I call her, who's always got my back, and that goes to my dad as well. So but I would call my mum my biggest inspiration. She's never let anything sort of stop her. She's fiercely, annoyingly independent, and has turned lots of adversity into her into her greatest strengths. I also have the amazing Tuffy Tilly, who is my coach and dear friend, who is never met a stronger person, but I suppose she's had a huge influence in me personally and over my riding as well. I'm really inspired by people like Michelle Obama, who just has such grace in everything, and I love. I've read her book, and I think she's so inspirational in terms of pulling together disparate parts of society and fighting with grace. Fighting with grace, I think, is something that's incredibly important. And I'm a massive Brené Brown fan as well. The woman is amazing, and some of her. Some of the quotes from the reading that I've done of her published works and listening to her podcast as well, really has inspired in terms of rebuilding my confidence in terms of leadership, something that I always thought I was really good at and then had a massive wobble over, but also in terms of how we live a wholehearted life and how, you know, it's important that, and my favourite one, I suppose, is, you know, clear is kind, being really clear with people about expectations, and that's the kindest way of dealing with people, really. It helps when you're actually trying to remove negative things from your life, or to steer clear of that. I think that one served me really well. So those are two more abstract inspirations. All women, though, strangely.
Yeah.
Probably some more. I find it really hard to pick just a couple. I'd like to give you a great big long list.
Oh, that's fine. 4 is enough. Or 3. No, it was 4. It was 4. Awesome. So it's been absolutely fascinating listening to your journey, your story, your inspiration. You're going to be one of those people for others. Absolutely. One day someone will say your name and you'll cry. You know, and what's next? What's next for you?
Ooh, I don't know. I've got, you know, I know I have to have a plan. Sorry, Jenny. Because you work the plan and you keep turning the plan and you consistently work towards the goals. What's next? The business is going really, really well. Who knew that when everything else is falling apart, I could see that as an opportunity to really strengthen. And what I've kind of realised through that is that I get so much joy out of serving the people in my audience, the people that I work with. I get a huge amount of joy from other people's success. So the business is going really, really well. I'm really enjoying working with a variety of people and creating new things that help people as well. So that's more of that, is what's coming next. In reality, I'm working on a massive uplift in the business at the moment. So so that's coming next from a business perspective. From the horses, probably loads more pictures of us competing with pulling silly faces and you know, joyfully shouting, "Oh my God, you're amazing," as I canter around the cross country, hopefully. And just, you know, more of getting back to the sport that I just is so annoying, but I absolutely love. More having fun as well on the outside of it, more doing things like farm rides and more sort of the fun stuff, and more laughter with the horses, not just taking it all so seriously all the time, you know, making sure there's a good balance with that. Yeah, just doing more stuff that brings you joy in your life, and really, and keeping that balance. Keeping the balance is really important for me, making sure that we are as a family doing stuff that is fun as well as hard work, and not tipping it too far the other way. And also not biting people's heads off when they point out that we might be tipping it too far the other way. And probably more apologies then as well. But yeah, more of the good stuff in life is the plan, certainly.
Awesome. I think the pandemic's really helped people reassess that as well. Certainly, like you say, a lot of people, when you're on that treadmill and you don't realise, when you're forced to take that pause and stop, you know, not event for a while, not do things for a while, not do what you love. And for those of us with online businesses, which, by the way, you can absolutely do a 6-figure, it's done. No worries, it's all good, you know. When you plough into that, because that's the thing that you can do and you've got a love for it, it's incredible. So cool. Well, I mean, wow, what fantastic. Looks like lots of fun ahead. Be great fun with the team and in Eden. And so if people want to get hold of you or ask you any questions or follow your journey or your story, what's the best way for them to do that?
I tend to hang out on Facebook predominantly. I'm Bex Jackson on Facebook. You can just find me. I consistently posting and liking stuff on the Flying Changes Facebook page. I'm trying to think which one you have. And also I'm World of Blonde on Instagram as well. So if you like looking at lots of pictures of pretty grey horses, and randomly of my food sometimes as well, I'm over on Instagram like that, but mainly on Facebook. Awesome.
Cool. World of Blonde on Instagram and Bex Jackson on Facebook. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you and hearing what you've got to say. And, you know, it's going to be great fun. And I'm sure lots of people are going to follow your escapades and everything you're up to. And yeah, the ups and downs of eventing life and running a business. So thank you so much. And we will speak soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.